Eating because you're stressed can be helpful in the short term if it makes you feel better, but in the long term, it can lead to weight gain. When you gain weight, the natural thing is to think of going on a diet. But here's the rub. Dieting is stressful in itself, sometimes very stressful. In studies of the effect of stress on eating, dieters eat more than non-dieters. This means that dieting itself is a risk factor for emotional eating. Experts agree that people with high levels of emotional eating should not focus on calorie-restricted diets, but instead should learn ways to enhance their emotion regulation skills. Today, we'll dive into the psychology of emotional eating, and later in the video, I'll give you a practical strategy that can really help. Emotional eating is essentially about emotions and not so much about eating. Eating in response to an emotion allows the avoidance of the painful feeling, and we rapidly feel better, which is why we do it. This works in the short term, partly because it focuses our attention on the food and away from the feeling. And as our attention narrows, it's as though we're sort of blinkered from whatever the feeling is. On top of that, some foods in some quantities have a sort of pharmacological effect on our nervous system. So as well as turning our attention away from the feeling, we may have a sort of numbing of the feeling or a dampening down of it. But in the longer term, nothing changes, and food remains your go-to for stress or for emotional pain. This was super relevant to Dina, who, after 40 years of dieting, was at her highest weight ever, and her weight was continuing to rise. She was feeling hopeless. She tried every diet going and now was in a total bind. She couldn't accept the weight she was, but she also couldn't see a way forward. When I asked Dina what she thought her main barriers were to losing weight successfully, in a heartbeat she said stress. Her full-time job, combined with caring for her parents and her children and her grandchildren, meant that she was overwhelmed and really wired by most evenings. Food had become her go-to. She needed another diet like she needed a hole in the head. What Dina urgently required was a practical way of dealing with the overwhelm without food. Building a toolbox of techniques that she could draw on that helped with emotional regulation meant that Dina reduced her emotional eating right down. In the early part of the evening, she developed a sequence of things that she would do to manage the stress that she was feeling and get into a calmer place. And then she would have a planned snack in the evening. She really enjoyed the snack, and it was planned, and it really didn't feel at all out of control like her usual emotional eating had done. Through doing this and making some other changes to her eating habits, Dina lost 13 kilos. So her weight had completely stopped increasing and was now going down. Finally, having ways of dealing with the difficult emotions directly without turning to food gave her a much greater sense of freedom around food and a hugely increased sense of confidence in herself. Now, whilst there are many techniques, and Dina used several, I want to share with you one of my favourites. This technique works because of the brain region that it activates. When you're emotionally overwhelmed, the rational, logical thinking part of your brain goes slightly offline. This happens at an automatic level to allow your instincts to kick in and deal with whatever the threat is. But what you need at that point of emotional or stress overwhelm is to re-engage that logical part of your brain, the rational part, by simply naming the feeling or the state that you're in at any point. You're recruiting higher brain regions, which means you've now got more access to your inner problem solver, which is what you want. This could mean saying to yourself, I notice I'm feeling really stressed now, or my heart is racing and I'm noticing that I think I can't cope here. So this naming and noticing is a first step in calming the system down, by accessing the part of you that can make choices and can make decisions. Please apply for my free eating pattern analysis if you want an individual analysis of your situation and weight loss strategies that will work for you. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and watch my next video for more on the psychology of weight loss.